Gonzalez.
Well, nearly 1 million people have been ordered to evacuate their homes along the coast of Texas as Hurricane Ike prepares to strike the Gulf. The National Weather Service issued a stern warning for certain areas, saying that people who ignore the evacuation order could, quote, face instant death. But there's a portion of the population who might not evacuate out of fear. Undocumented immigrants in affected areas of Texas remain skeptical about the mandatory evacuation order, and they fear that they could be arrested and deported at checkpoints and evacuation centers. FEMA spokesman Dan Martinez said Thursday that there would be a, quote, hurricane amnesty for all undocumented migrants in Texas. But earlier this summer, despite assurances to the contrary from Department of Homeland Security Chief Michael Chertoff, Border Patrol agents kept open checkpoints and apprehended a van of people trying to evacuate from Hurricane Dolly. Last month, many undocumented immigrants in New Orleans did not evacuate during Hurricane Gustav due to deportation concerns.
The climate of fear around deportation has worsened as the Immigration Customs Enforcement Agency, or ICE, continues to step up its raids across the country. The two largest raids in U.S. history took place in the last 5 months. ICE agents rounded up hundreds of workers in Postville, Iowa in May, and then in Laurel, Mississippi last month right around the Democratic Convention. Although the subject of immigration and the growing crackdown on immigrants was largely absent from both the conventions, immigrant rights organizers held marches in both Denver and St. Paul. Democracy Now! Was at the immigration rally in Denver, Colorado last month.
They want us here working, but they don't want to have any rights.
And they don't want to pay the right wage. They don't want to pay the minimum wage. They want to pay less than minimum wage.
We're in a country that isn't our own, but we want the government and the new administration to reform immigration for everyone.
There's strength in immigrants. They have a lot of passion. They're recent people here, and we need to let them know what it feels like to have rights. And they have the power to change things in this country. A few generations back, my family was immigrants as well, and it can only bring strength to the nation.
Make sure that the people's voices are heard, and that the issues that are important to people, immigrant rights, rights of children, rights of families, health insurance for all people are recognized here, recognized by our government, recognized by the people in power, by Barack Obama, who I support, and who recognizes that these are important issues to us for this election.
My mom and my dad came here in the early 70s. They managed to get amnesty in '86 under the ERCA law. We feel that it's possible to get amnesty once again, and we want to just get out of the shadows of scapegoating. So my parents don't have to deal with that, and the next generation's parents don't have to deal with that.
In May of this year, ICE went in and rounded up about 300 to 400 workers, and right now the town has become a virtual prison for the women and the children. They can't leave and they can't work.
What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Now! ¿Qué queremos?
This country doesn't respect you. My words don't matter. They'll get what they want, including taking my life. I'm tired of them treating me like I'm less, just because of the color of my skin. They have everything of ours, including our country.
America
is for all Americans.
This is my vote.
This is my vote, too.
This is vote de todos. This is a country of immigrants. We need the change, but Obama is not the solution.
Regardless of who gets elected on November, working people will continue to bear the brunt of the economic crisis. The war in Afghanistan and Iraq will continue, and it will be deepening to Pakistan. And the attacks against working people at home will continue, the raids and deportations.
Estos son not the criminals. It's just the
crime is the criminal.
Immigrants' rights activists rallying in Denver during the Democratic National Convention. As the ICE raids on immigrant communities continue across the country, we're joined in the Firehouse studio by someone who's been following the issues of immigration, labor, and free trade for years. David Bacon, award-winning photojournalist, labor organizer, immigrant rights activist. His articles have appeared in The Nation, American Prospect, Los Angeles Times, San Francisco Chronicle, and he hosts a radio show on Pacifica station KPFA in Berkeley. His latest book is called Illegal People: How Globalization Creates Migration and Criminalizes Migrants. David Bacon, welcome to Democracy Now! The largest raid in U.S. history, immigrant raid, right before the Democratic Convention. Hundreds rounded up.
That's right, in Laurel, Mississippi. And then what got even less coverage was that they took 481 people and they put them in a detention center in Gina, Louisiana, and just sort of left them there for 2 weeks. In Gina, right.
The Gina 6.
Right. In fact, that detention center is probably the biggest single, source of employment for people who live in Gina now. But the problem with those workers is that they were, there was no habeas corpus, there was no bail, there weren't even any charges against those people for 2 weeks. It's kind of like creating, I think, a Guantanamo-style of justice or injustice that's excused because it's being directed. ICE mentions the word illegal, and then all kinds of things become permissible that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
And the spread of these huge raids over the last few years, it seems almost in response to the immigrant rights protests that developed a couple of years ago. And you saw this new movement developing in America, and suddenly the federal government all across the country begins clamping down and raiding factories, communities, stopping buses and trains, boarding buses and trains, even Amtrak trains and regular commercial buses, checking IDs all over the place.
That's right. These are, as you say, these are terror raids, really. The purpose of these raids is really to terrorize and frighten immigrant communities, partly because I think the government is afraid of people asserting their rights and asserting their existence in the country through the marches and through other kinds of immigrant rights activities, organizing unions and plants and so forth. But also, I think the government has an agenda here. In fact, it's pretty open. Michael Chertoff keeps saying it over and over and over, and that is that he says we're going to shut the back door and open the front door. And what that means is that ICE is trying to push for the establishment of new guest worker programs so that people can come here as workers, but only as workers, without rights, without eventually getting political rights, without becoming citizens, certainly without voting, but whose labor is going to be used in the economy. And so these raids are a way of terrorizing people and saying to people, don't think that you're going to be able to come to the United States, don't think that you're going to be able to work in any other way other than through these programs.
I think one of the things that you raise in your book and in a lot of your articles is that the movement for comprehensive immigration reform, even among Democrats, is divided in terms of the purposes of that immigration reform, that there are groups that are really representative of business interests who are looking for that front door situation. Could you expound on that?
Sure. The comprehensive immigration bills that we saw in Congress, in a lot of ways, were labor supply bills. These were bills that were really intended to supply guest workers to industry, and then an enforcement program to kind of drive workers into those programs. So the difference of opinion, I think, in the Democratic Party especially, is between people who sponsored those programs and other people like Sheila Jackson Lee, the congresswoman from Houston, who said, instead of having a guest worker program, what we need is people to be able to come here with green cards and with permanent residence visas. And also the thing I think that she said that was really a pioneering idea, and that was that we also need a jobs program. We need to couple immigration reform with jobs programs. So she said, let's take the fees that people pay when they're normalizing their status and use that to set up job creation and job training programs in communities with high unemployment so that all communities can have some kind of benefit out of these bills. These labor supply bills, comprehensive immigration reform bills, what they do is they pit communities against each other over jobs, over wages, and so forth.
David Bacon, there's a new ad campaign from Numbers USA, an anti-immigrant group, that talks about diminishing resources, which everyone is concerned about, and the increased number of immigrants coming into this country. You also have ads on, well, like the magazine you write for, The Nation, an African-American face, a full-page ad, talks about immigrants taking jobs from African-Americans.
Well, that's the kind of job competition that I think Jackson Lee was trying to get at with her bill. The idea that if we advocate for a jobs program, and you know, a jobs program used to be part of the Democratic Party platform. Every election we would hear Democrats saying we need the federal government to guarantee employment. You don't hear that anymore, and I think that's also one reason